Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Kind of a quiet week this week, I think. There are definitely a few things to talk about, but it really feels like everybody is making something of a slow start into 2021. It's probably not helped as well by everybody's attentions being elsewhere, kind of with everything that's going on in the world and specifically in the US as well at the moment. That might have kind of put a little bit of a dampener on kind of new things coming out. And also, I think it's just a general trajectory of kind of how it goes. You know, people go and set their deadlines towards the end of the year, and then it takes a bit of time to ramp up again and kind of come up with new things and new announcements. But there's definitely some things happening, so let's get into them and talk about them. First one, blog post I put out earlier, and this is really for anybody building applications on Microsoft Teams. And it's some guidance and design guidance really for building applications that look like they belong in Microsoft Teams. It's very obvious, I think, sometimes that you've got the integration points in Teams where you have, for instance, tabs. And you see tabs inside Microsoft Teams, and it's very obvious that it's a tab that probably didn't start off its life, in being sort of designed for Microsoft Teams, if that makes sense, or being thought about as being something that should be in Microsoft Teams. And it really shows sometimes, and it becomes, very, very obvious. Like even silly things like, a completely all white background on a tab page is really jarring when you look at it inside Microsoft Teams, because the Teams background is kind of very purple and greys. There isn't that kind of stark white background. It's always a good idea if you're developing for an application for Microsoft Teams to make it look like it belongs in Teams, and this is where guidance like this can really help. So this design guidance it's a UI kit, and it's a kit of both guidance, best practice, iconography, color schemes, UI components, some templates, and some design concepts that kind of all come together to give you everything you need to kind of really build those Teams applications that look like they belong. It's all in the blog post. I've got a link to it. It's hosted on something called Figma, which I'd never heard of before, but it's a like a collaborative design tool for graphics. So you need to have a Figma account to access it. That's free to get, but you just have to go through that sign-up process to get it. And when you do that, then you have full access to this entire UI kit, which you can look through and read and kind of take and build out yourself as well. There's some guidance there as well around building bots. There's some stuff on conversation style. I think I've covered some of that before. It might be that a lot of the content that's in here is also repeated in Microsoft documentation, but it's good to have it all in one place. Because it's a good reference material basically. So I thought that was it's definitely worth looking into if you are building applications, sort of UI based applications or bots for Teams. Okay, next thing I want to highlight is a blog post posted on the tech community site by a fellow MVP, Mark Rackley. And this is all about using Power Virtual Agents for Microsoft Teams. So I've talked about Power Virtual Agents before. I did a whole video before Christmas around using PVAs versus using bots in bot frameworks. If that sounds interesting, go check that out. But Mark's blog post is talking about Power Virtual Agents for Teams. So specifically, this is this ability to create a Power Virtual Agent from within the Teams interface, to author it from inside of Teams and have it do, collect information, have some conditional logic in there as well, pass off to Power Automate flows, do some logging in as well and retrieve information about the user. And I think it's really nice. He's done a video as well that kind of goes alongside the blog post. So you should definitely go watch that as well. It's very instructive. I think it's good. It's an interesting space, Power Virtual Agents inside Microsoft Teams, because actually if it solves the problem, you don't need to dig into bot framework. And this is the great thing about Power Platform, is that it doesn't solve all the problems, but it's solving the common ones. And if it solves the problem for you, then you're going to save time by using it. So yeah, definitely worth looking at this blog post. I'll put a link to it in the description, so you've got it. There's one more thing I want to talk about actually. So like I say, short one this week. The last one is more of a long form reading thing, but it's a blog post by Scott Hanselman, kind of looking back on 2020 from a perspective of software development. And this comes from Scott, who's been a developer for a long time, but also has been a remote worker for a long time, kind of by choice. He's worked at Microsoft for a long time, but he's worked remotely for 13 something years, and that's because he doesn't live kind of near campus. He lives a few hours away or whatever, and so he's done it a long time, and it's interesting to have his perspective on what the last 12 months have been like, and I found that really interesting actually to read through. He did do a blog post earlier in the year about how remote work is not the same thing as kind of quarantine work, which is very different when kind of the whole family is at home and like everybody is also working at home and by choice. So not by choice, but by like force of situation. So that's very different from regular remote working. It's a lot more stressful. It's a lot harder, and so, it was, that was a good read. And then this whole blog post as well is kind of really good to kind of read through. A lot of it rings true actually, about how developers react to kind of disasters and crises, how, everybody is now remotely working and collaborating remotely, how some things actually end up better than remote than they were, and how it's kind of engendered us thinking a bit more about ourselves and other people as people. I think it's something you very much take for granted when you don't work remote, but when everybody is working remote, you end up thinking about it again. I think that was really interesting, and good to get Scott's point of view as well. I thought it was good. Right. I think that's everything I want to talk about this week. Like I say, quite a short one, quite a quick one, but that's the way it goes sometimes. A couple of interesting things for me, just so you know, kind of going through the process of looking at what I want to do in 2021, the kind of content I want to produce and how I can best help you. I think expect more source code, expect more open source projects, expect more how-to blogs. Those are the hardest, actually. All of those three things are hard to do because they take so much time. They are also the most interesting and rewarding though, so there's that. They do take a lot of time to put together. So that's what I want to do. That's what I am going to try and do. And I guess together we'll see if that is what I do. All right. That's everything from me. Have a great week, whatever it is you're doing, and I will talk to you again next time.